I remember exactly how frustrating it was when I was starting to learn mastering. And I've recently noticed in the comments section a similar frustration, like something is being gatekept or information isn't being shared by mastering engineers or those in the mastering community because they don't want other people to know these secrets. So today, as a challenge, I pulled up an old session, Kwanzaa by my good friend Hugh Klein, and I'm challenging myself to remaster this using analog gear only. It's going to be really fun because I got the camera up there, my hands over here, and while I do this, I want to answer these questions about gatekeeping in the mastering community. Is there a secret to pro sounding masters? Do you need mastering grade analog gear for pro results? How important are dynamics? And do mastering engineers gatekeep information? If they do, what are they not telling you? So let's take a listen to this. It's going to be completely different vibes for this video because you're not going to have heard something like this before on the channel at least. And let's enjoy. That is sweet, buttery and smooth. That mix is just perfect as it is. I've got everything dialed in here, but it's zero. The Manly's in bypass, the EQs aren't in, and something I love about this track are the brushes on that snare. Just, you know that coated snares, the brushes just go over the top. I really want to get that texture out, so I want a little bit more top end, but I've got to be careful because I don't want, the piano has a very soft hammer action. I don't want it to sound too honky or tonky, honky-tonky sort of piano when you start to boost the top end. I just want to get enough sizzle, and I'm going to use the top end boost on the HV, on the high voltage EQ success for that. So let's have a listen. One and a half dB boost, high shelf from 10 kilohertz and up. When I hit 2 dB on that shuffle, it's starting to sound a little bit funny. We'll keep playing. Okay, a little bit heavier on the compression that I would have thought for something like this, but there's quite a bit of dynamics. Before I went into the Varimu, I tucked a bit of that sub away here with -1, -1.5 at 40 hertz, and also some of those fundamentals in the piano are quite pokey, so I took that back a notch at 650 hertz, just a decibel, and it's helping smooth it out really nicely. Now, let's answer this. Is there a secret to pro sounding masters? I honestly don't think, or at least in my experience, mastering engineers are doing anything differently in their processing or the tools they use than what other engineers or producers have access to. But what is different? Why do masters coming out of a mastering studio sometimes and more often than not sound different to what people are able to produce on their own? And for me, it is not necessarily the EQ they're using or how they're using the EQ or how they're using the compressor. It's about how they're approaching the project. So the project as a whole, not necessarily the processing they're doing. They're coming, and I'm not going down the route of, they're a fresh set of ears, they're fresh perspective. No, I'm going down the road of they've got a vested interest in making that master sound as incredible as it possibly can, because that represents their work. And to achieve that, it's typically not, the best sounding masters aren't achieved in your mastering console and what you're choosing to do there and then. It's achieved in your relationship with your clients. And that's what people don't understand. The relationship a mastering engineer has with a mixing engineer or with a label, or with a publisher, or with a producer, or with an artist is sort of the secret sauce, so to speak, of achieving the results they do, because they build up a rapport to understand the sound somebody's trying to achieve. They're able to communicate those things. They're able to give critique on mixes and push back and create a relationship where they know how certain mixers mix their sound and what works and what doesn't when it comes to mastering. They build that relationship, and there in itself is something valuable that you, A, can't teach, B, you can't replicate, as in my relationship with certain mixing engineers can't be replicated by other mastering engineers the same way I can't replicate how other mastering engineers work with other mixing engineers. So those relationships are a part of the mastering process not many people get privy to. And it's not that those relationships are gatekept, it's just that they're not discussed as much because they're not an attractive topic. Like, it's not like how to EQ your kick to make it sound super big in mastering. It's sort of like more complex interactions that we have with engineers, with producers, that we sort of have with ourselves when we're in sessions week after week with the same mixer or with the same producer, and we sort of get an idea of how they're working. And what people end up hearing in public at the end of it that comes out of the mastering studio, it sounds great. It sounds pro, so to speak, but it's not just the result of the gear or the mastering studio itself. It's the result of the relationship those mastering engineers build up with their clients, with other professionals in order to achieve those sounds. So it's not just the mastering engineer that picks a particular EQ or compressor and it makes it sound amazing. It's actually the team that they integrate into or that they're a part of that work together in order to make that master sound amazing. Okay, so it's a sort of trust exercise. I can go to certain mixing engineers and say, hey, that kick's too loud. Do you mind just bringing it down a decibel or two? Because it's ridiculous. And there's that mutual respect where they're like, okay, if Nick's telling me this, he's achieved results for me on my masters before, there's a reason why he's saying this, and then you get to work towards a really great sounding master. Back to this, I want to get something juicy out of it. See, I've got this 1 decibel boost at 1.3K, which is sort of an octave above where a lot of the fundamentals in the piano is. And I did that because, I don't know, I just feels like it gives it a nice natural presence. But the problem is it's that snare, that brushed snare, which I said I loved at the start, it's bringing out a lot of the mid-range from it. So it's making the snares sit forward a bit too much, and I don't necessarily like that. I did put a high-pass filter on it because it just sort of naturally opens up the top end. But this 1.3K boost, I'm not enjoying, actually. I'm going to get rid of it and think of how I can manipulate the sound in another way to make that mid-range just pull forward a little bit more. Just level matching this so I can A/B it. Okay, so what I've done there is, even though I've done that boost for the snare pre-compression, after the compressor, because things are a little bit more tighter, that sizzle is feeling a little bit artificial, so I've just ducked a decibel with the high shelf here. Then, when I've A/B'd, I like the tone of mine. Overall, the tone is nice, but the low end is sort of lacking because I put this high-pass filter on. Again, to get a little bit more air out of it without having to boost the air, I put a high-pass filter on. So I've added half a dB at 100 hertz, 110 hertz low shelf. And I like the way that sounds. Now we're actually in the analog domain. It's probably a good question to answer. Do you need mastering grade analog gear for pro results? This is probably something which is going to be a hot topic, but this is something which is gatekept because so many mastering engineers have great analog gear, which they spend tens and tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars on. So people think that unless you spend that money on that sort of gear, you will not achieve the same results these other engineers are achieving. I'm going to get so much flack for saying this, but you do not need mastering grade analog gear to get pro sounding results. Pro sounding results comes from the decisions you make, not the gear you use to make them. And actually, despite that sort of like nice sentiment I just said there, digital technology has come so far that it is in every aspect of any person with a mastering career now in 2023 uses some form of digital processing in order to achieve the results they're achieving. And if anything, they lean heavily on it because it is repeatable. It has higher resolution. It is more like, as in more detailed as to what you can do and how you can manipulate it. So this idea that is gatekept, that you need to spend tens of thousands of dollars on analog gear or mastering grade analog gear to get pro results is bullshit. That is a gate-kept myth, and the only sort of people perpetuating that are people selling the gear or sponsored by the companies or trying to push it. I love my analog gear. I love other analog gear that I've had in the studio. I've had Crane Song, I've had Dangerous stuff in here, and it's all great. But ultimately, the pro results or the results which I achieve for my clients isn't dependent on the gear I'm using. It's the decisions I'm making. And I think that's really important for anybody starting out to realize your decisions are more important than the tools that you have necessarily. Like a good tradesman can't blame their tools. Now with this analog chain, the way I've got it set up is that I've got trims on the in and out of this. So I've got the trim where I can gain stage how hot I'm coming out of my D to A into the analog chain. And I've got another trim after the analog chain so I can gain stage into a true peak limiter. I'm not planning to use this limiter to get loudness. It's just there as a keepsafe, so to speak. And just sort of see how much headroom I've got here to manipulate this output trim into the limiter. So you can see that true peak limiter is just catching off peaks here. And I actually like what I've dialed in, because what I'm going to show you is the master I produced back in 2018, 2019 with, at the time I would have had the Crane Song Ibis and the TC finalizer in the chain in lieu of the EQ6S and using the Antelope A to D converters. And I'm going to show you the original master I did using both digital and analog. That was a hybrid master versus the pure analog master I've done today. So actually, let's do that now, and then I'm going to answer something really important. So there's some things I like about my original master I did back in 2019, and some things I like about this master. This master, the upper mids are much more clearer. The definition, the sort of tactfulness of each of the piano hits and each of the brush strokes and the snare are just nicer to listen to, I guess. But one thing I really can't get my head around is the low end. The low end in the old one is bigger. It is rounder. And I think this high pass filter is maybe a hair too aggressive. And I think the low shelf, I can boost an extra half a dB because I'm only doing a half dB boost there. Because I love the warmth of the old one. Even though the dynamics aren't as nice, I love the warmth of the old one. So let's try and pull that back in a little bit, because I like what I'm doing at the moment, but I love what I did all those years back. So let's go a 1 decibel boost at 110, and the high pass filter, let's put it 27 hertz and see how this sounds. No. You know what I think it is? I think it's this cut pre the compressor. And I sort of need that there, because otherwise this compressor is going to go wild. So what we're going to do is we're going to get rid of the high pass filter. We're just going to tempt danger a little bit here and see what happens. I'm really focusing on getting that sub to be nice and round and not too choked in, which it is at the moment, which I'm not liking. So let's have another listen. All right. I'm going to give an extra half dB back to the 40 hertz, but then I'm going to just back that threshold off a little bit. Next, I've got to show you the dynamics of this track, as in metered as a final master. But this is probably one of the most gate-kept bullshit discussions in the mastering community, and that is the love for dynamics mastering engineers have. In the comments section, on YouTube videos, we love dynamics and punchiness. And this is true on a technical level. We are always trying to make things hit and have impact and detail and little nuances, like you can hear in this song between the snare and where the kick is hitting and where the piano is. Really important, exceptionally important, especially in something like this. You're not going to push and drive it, are you? The reality is, though, when it comes to jobs, and I've said this before in multiple videos, is that dynamics are only so important. There are other things like the tone, the texture, the overall balance, the macro dynamics between one section to the next. You can automate things there. And the reason why I'm talking about all these other things is because there's such a focus on dynamics, negative 14 LUFS, dynamics, that it doesn't represent the industry we're in. Okay, so the gatekeeping of you need to have dynamic masters, you need to have -1 decibel true peak is all bullshit, because it's thrown out the window as soon as you get a job on your table and you know that client is after something loud. Okay, you cannot make excuses for it. You have to be able to perform, manipulate the audio, manipulate the mix into a way that it can present loud and impactful like the client wants without compromising the integrity of the music dynamically. Sometimes things get compromised, but it is never at the detriment of the music. Less dynamics might not be always favorable, but you can do it in ways which are to the music. So I think that's one thing which is not so gatekept. I just think mastering engineers bullshit themselves or bullshit each other, saying, oh, we love dynamics, when in reality, when it comes to a client knocking on their door, and every mastering engineer would have done this, and if you don't, you're probably losing jobs because you're an idiot. I know that's a harsh thing to say, but it's just as simple as this. An electronic label comes to your door, they go, hey, we've got this trance track we want to get out. Can you master it? And you're like, yes, I want to master it. You are not going to turn around to that client or that label and go, but it's going to be -14 LUFS. You're not going to fucking do that. No one will. And if you do that, they'll be like, oh yeah, -14 LUFS. Yeah, cool. And never reply to your email. Okay, so dynamics are only so important. Understanding them, understanding how you can manipulate them, very important. Are they the be and end all? Absolutely not. So let's listen before and after the original master I did back in 2018, 2019 and the new master. So I'm pretty happy with that master. I've only used 2 EQs, 1 compressor, a little duck in the subs, a little duck in the mids, a boost in the highs, then a boost back in the lows after the compression. Quite a bit of compression, about 1.5 to 2 dB with the Varimu, which is more than I usually use. And this is tasty. So do mastering engineers gatekeep information? Old school? I think so. I've experienced it before with old school engineers where they're sort of like, oh, don't tell anybody I do this, or don't tell anybody I use this. But it's sort of insecurities and BS. They're not really hiding any secrets which people don't have access to on the internet. In terms of if you're somebody learning and trying to understand mastering, are you missing out on any information that you otherwise couldn't get because people are keeping it a secret? No, I don't believe so. And here's why. As you develop, as you learn mastering, and as I'm still learning mastering 10 years on, every day I'm learning, one thing you learn is that nothing is ever constant. You're never ever mastering records the same way you were 2, 3, 4, 5 years ago. This record I mastered 4 years ago, I definitely didn't approach it the same way I did 4 years ago because my listening sensibilities and my ability to understand the way I manipulate things is very different. And with that, also, how do I put it? As you're learning, you will learn new things and interpret things in new ways. It's not necessarily about trying to find one piece of secret information that's being kept from you from achieving really good sounding masters. It's more so your plateau that you might be feeling, or the reason why you're not progressing is because you're not breaking something. You have to break things in your learning process or dispel current knowledge, so unlearn things you know. So things that you might think you have understood one way for so long, like me with certain limiters and true peak limiting and oversampling, I had completely wrong for a long time until I relearned it. And then I changed my approach to the way I was doing my masters, and it helped me improve. So it's sort of like this evolution which you go through. There's no secret information you're going to find that's going to level you up. It's more so on you, the individual, somebody learning mastering, to develop your sensibilities and improve with that. So gatekeeping, I don't believe so, but it's on you to improve yourself. And that's sort of the message which I can leave you with, is like, if you're learning and you're feeling frustrated, that's good. Frustrate yourself some more, suck a little bit more in terms of like, make some mistakes, do some really bad masters, learn from them and evolve. That's the best way to get ahead. So with that, I'm going to leave you to it. There's some other really cool videos I've done on toxic mastering engineers and pro mixing engineers. Go check them out. And until next time, take care.